racket number 2, and it
Speaking
involves,
of which.
Yeah, good segue. Remote work is killing Florida as a retirement paradise. Okay, so Florida is up 33% in home values compared to this time last year, according to Zillow. And that's versus 18% nationwide. So Florida home values have gone up more than nationwide in the same time period. There are a lot of rental hikes. Okay. Blackstone has invested $300 million into Florida in the last year. Also, Nicole, there's 4.5 million residents that are over 65 years of age. That's the second highest percentage in the country. So what does this all mean, and why is this not as desirable as a retirement location for retirees? Well, the values are way up. So retirees are like, I want to retire, and
No
Florida's
longer
always
affordable.
been. Yeah. This is an insider article, by the way. Insider, I'll tip my hat. You guys did a good job here. We could do like 3 segments on this one article. There's so much information in there. But Florida has been seen as California on the cheap. You get this great weather. You're living in paradise. If you go to South Florida, you're actually getting tropical weather year round. And it's always been relatively cheap. Now, inexpensive for
Yes.
in comparison to California, right?
Yes.
And so that was the headline. Insider use California on the cheap. Florida's status as a paradise for retirees was established more than 70 years ago, and it's thrived as a place for Americans to spend their remaining days ever since. Okay, so the poor man's paradise, California on the cheap. Gary Momino, a professor of history and co-founder of the Florida Studies program at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg. From 1945 to 2000, 1 in 4 senior citizens who left another state in America moved to Florida. No other state was even close. Yeah. Since Florida property values have gone up so much, Nicole, do you think this is going to deter retirees and they're going to start looking somewhere else for their retirement home?
I don't know. I mean, potentially. I think, though, there's a lot of other things that come into play here about, income taxes, obviously, additional taxes, weather. I mean, I guess you could go further north, but I think, again, as it says, though, I mean, yeah, it's what, you said 33% higher and 18 is nationwide. But again, if it was so inexpensive to begin with, is it leveling out down there? So it could still be inexpensive for someone to move down to Florida. So I don't think it's going to deter anybody. I think the weather is always going to drive people to Florida. I mean, look at you. You're down in Florida. There's tons of people still going. So I don't think it's deterring many.
Obviously, we know remote work and like this article leads off with, the lifestyle changes of so many have brought so many more down to Florida. I'll also say that with that, people with children in school in certain locations, it's a real thing. Like some of the schools are blowing up. A lot of the private schools have waiting lists in Florida. Yeah. So people can work from down here. They want to put their children in a particular type of education environment. Yep. That's also driving. So that drives up prices. And you and I know when people are competing to get into a certain school district or next to a particular school, anywhere in the country, when that's happening, that drives prices up. And so now you're a retiree, you're looking at these areas, and they're not only being driven up by retirees, they're being driven up by everybody. 8 of the 10 most overvalued home markets in the country, Nicole, are in Florida. That's another study by that Florida Atlantic University that we just mentioned before. So there's a lot of different variables that are pushing prices up. That being said, the median sale price in Florida, and it's a big state, right? Yeah. The median sale price is still between $300,000 and $400,000, which is, if you're moving from the Northeast to Florida, that is going to be a bargain for you.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So there's still a lot of value in Florida. I think there's going to continue to be. I don't think this. What I would say is a racket is the fact that people are going to be deterred from coming down to Florida. Now, with the rent hikes we've seen in Miami, people are complaining in Miami, like, I'm getting pushed out of Miami. I can't afford the rent. Well, I get it. Florida's a big state, and it's just speaking to the desirability of an area like Miami, of South Florida. Naples, which I'm very familiar with, is the same thing, right? You might get pushed out of Naples and you might end up, my parents, it just happened to them. They basically sold in Naples. They're going to Bonita Springs now, which is just north.
Well, what an amazing
Naples.
opportunity though for the surrounding place, towns and cities around the major cities. There, like you said, there's a lot of Florida. It's a big state. There's still a lot of in between the Miamis and the Naples to actually start growing. So again, I think it's probably an incredible opportunity for those towns to really start figuring out why people are going to the Naples, why people are going to the Miami, and try to start developing those towns into sort of those, mini Mecca spots, especially if they're trying to attract the retirees, like walkability, what services are they offering?
Yeah.
Make sure you're in tune with all of that so that your town is the next on the list for people to be moving to.
There's so many communities that are built just for retirees. Obviously, the most popular one that they mentioned in this article is the Villages. That's a huge community in Central Florida. Here's another wild stat. If you're into people relocating to Florida, certainly if you're a Florida agent, you should absorb this report. About 30% of home sales in Florida are all cash buyers. That being said, I mentioned it earlier, Blackstone spent more than $300 million. Like there is pressure from everywhere. So the affordability is going to continue to be an issue in Florida, even as we go into a shifting market. Because when you've got investors buying cash, you've got retirees coming down, selling in Chicago, selling in the Northeast, selling from wherever, moving to Florida, buying cash. It makes a really ultra competitive situation for people who have to use a mortgage. So Florida is going to continue to get more expensive, especially over the next 10 to 15 years. And I'd love to know in the comments, if you're on YouTube right now, in the comments, where are most of the retirees that are exiting your state moving to? Is it Florida? Like we said, 1 out of 4 people since 1945 have chosen to move to Florida. Is that the same in your market? Are the majority or 25%, like the national average, of your buyers, your retirees exiting the state, are they moving to Florida? Love to know in the comments. Hey guys, appreciate you checking out this episode of The Real Word. If you want the full episode, go over to the Broke Agent YouTube. That's where we're hosting the full podcast. If you want to continue to see the segments broken out and the short clips, stay right here on The Real Word YouTube.